Dear students, greetings to all. In this video lecture, we'll be starting up with the first chapter of biology, that is the living world. As we had a discussion in the online class that the course of biology comprises of 5 units, starting up with the first unit, that is the classification, next the morphology and anatomy of plants. Later to it, the third unit comprises of cell cycle and division. The fourth unit is dedicated to plant physiology, and the fifth unit deals with animal physiology. So in this first unit, that is the classification, we are basically going to talk about the systematics, classification of plant and animal. We know that there are on an average 1.8 million species which are present on this planet Earth. It is very necessary for us to classify the organisms so that we can carry out a detailed study of them, and it will make our study of biology a simpler one. Therefore, the binomial system of nomenclature, that is, the binomial system of nomenclature, was proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. Now, when I talk about this binomial system of nomenclature, it means naming the varied species which are present on this planet, which have been identified as of yet, into their generic name and the species name. So here binomial, the term, it refers to the two names, which basically comprises of the generic name and the specific epithet. So it deals with the generic and the specific epithet. Now, like for example, if we take our biological name, which is referred to as Homo sapiens. So Homo is the generic name and sapiens is the species name. When we start dealing up with chapter 1, that is the living world, we first need to understand what does that term, the living world, stand for. Now, when I use this term, that is living, it refers to an entity which is animate in nature. So firstly, we'll have to understand the difference between living, that is animate, and non-living, that is the inanimate objects which are present in this environment. Now, when I talk about living organisms exhibit the characteristics like they have a definite lifespan. That means, like for example, if we take the example of Homo sapiens, our average lifespan actually is 100 years. But then it's generally 70 to 80 years. For Drosophila, that is fruit fly, it is 2 weeks. So the lifespan, we've got a definite lifespan. Whereas when we talk about the inanimate objects, they do not have a definite lifespan. The living organisms have got the capacity to self-repair. That is lacking in case of non-living organisms. Living organisms exhibit growth. That's an important characteristic. This is because the cell divide by the process of cell division, that is mitosis, and daughter cells are produced. Whereas non-living cells do not exhibit this characteristic property of cell division. Here the cell division could be either mitotic division or meiotic division, which will, on the basis of which we can classify that those organisms are asexual, which have just got the mitotic division, and the ones which have got both mitosis as well as meiosis, they are the sexually reproducing one. The next is that living organisms, they carry out various metabolic activities in their body. That means when now we talk about this term, that is metabolism, we'll study that it includes catabolism and anabolism. Whereas when we talk about non-living organisms, they do not have such metabolic activities, or such metabolic activities are not found in their system. So if I try to brief this up, so living organisms, they exhibit growth, they have a capacity to self-repair, they have got a definite lifespan, the lifespan is definite, they carry out the various metabolic activities which are lacking in the non-living organism. Whereas when we talk about the non-living organisms, they will not exhibit all these characteristic properties. Okay, so do not exhibit these characteristic properties. Now, when I talk about metabolism, metabolism is basically, or the metabolic activities are divided into two. One is anabolism and the other one is referred to as catabolism. Now, when I talk about anabolism, that refers to building up reaction. So, in such kind of reactions, so building up reactions. So, in such kind of reactions, a particular substance is formed. Whereas catabolism refers to breaking down reactions. Now, the example, if I quote the examples of anabolism, it includes photosynthesis, whereas catabolism, it is respiration. In anabolism, like in photosynthesis, glucose is formed by utilizing carbon dioxide in water. Whereas when we talk about catabolism, there is breakdown of glucose, that is in respiration, there is oxidation of glucose so as to produce carbon dioxide, water, and there is the energy which is liberated in form of ATP. So now if we try to understand what are the characteristics of living and non-living, they can be differentiated on the basis of these important characteristics, that is growth, on consciousness, whether the organisms are conscious or they do not respond to stimuli. Living organisms have got the capacity to respond to external stimulus, whereas non-living organisms do not have the capacity or lack the capacity of consciousness. So these are the basic criteria on the basis of which we can classify or study organisms and differentiate them as living and non-living. So in this module, we had a detailed discussion on what are the characteristics which differentiate the living from the non-living. The remaining part of the chapter will be dealt up in the next module. Thank you.